I have no problem with some tightening, setting stronger codes, stronger regulations, but in face of the properties that FEMA has already deemed in trying to dissuade people from building in the first place, it's very costly, and it's hard on standard residents. That's why a lot of people, the property that I just purchased to the front, very wonderful couple trying to build there, but they actually had to resign from building because the costs were too great with the regulations being placed in a flood zone, in a velocity zone, insurance rates being much higher than what the average citizen, even people directly behind me, pay much lower rates on insurance and other elements than what those in these zones. And so I think that has to be looked at when you're making a decision. I think there has to be some commercial element, even though a resident like myself, this is our home, it's a place we're going to use, but we would also like to be able to sustain some revenue with it. So.
All right. Thank you, sir. Anyone else on this side of the room like to speak? Anyone in the back of the room? Yes, ma'am. Allow her to go first. You'll be next. You're good.
Hi, I'm Christine Sinks, and I live at 1538 Collins Street. When we bought the house 3 years ago, we were told they were not allowed to have short-term rentals in the RM30 zones. We bought the house, we bought it to retire in, and now we're going to have short-term rentals if you allow it. Hopefully you don't. I don't know how it's, I could go several ways. I could tell you that Mr. George told us this was going to be his retirement home and then turned around and decided to make it a short-term rental. He bought the 3 properties in front of us. His builder and his wife both said they were going to make those short-term rentals also. They live in Hammond, Louisiana, which is, I hear, 4 hours away, and they don't have anybody to be there, and they don't want to use a managing company firm, so there's no one within a 30-minute response time. That leaves all the property and safety for the neighborhood reliant on us neighbors. And I mean, they're not even reporting the crimes that are happening at their house now. That's not even on Airbnb. They had their trailer, someone tried to steal their trailer a couple times. We had to call 911 because rap artists decided to make a video on their house when they weren't home. We've had drunk drivers go through our fence. We can't take any more crime. We've called 911 more times in the last 3 years than I have in my entire life. And I just don't think that it would be fair or safe to the residents to make this property a commercial property in a residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Trilby Trahan, and I reside at 127 St. George Avenue. The property that I'm coming up here to tell y'all about is the 119 St. George. In the past week, we've had 2 domestic disputes. One day we had 2 police cars, and the next day we had 4 police cars at that property. Now, y'all did vote this down as a short-term rental, but the gentleman is renting it month to month, and this is what we're having to put up with. So if it's a short-term rental, it's probably going to be just as bad. And I'd like y'all to know that there are issues that come up with rentals in the neighborhood, and y'all should really consider them, because we can't sit out on our patio because the 2 people renting the house are having a domestic dispute. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the right? Anyone in the back of the room? Oh, come on up.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Patricia Mosley, licensed clinical social worker, retired Lieutenant Colonel from the United States Air Force. I live on 113 Caldwell Avenue. That is not very far from here. What I want to talk about is a little bit different with the short-term rentals, but it is an increase in crime and criminal activity that's been occurring within our neighborhood. For myself, it is a problem of identity theft. I believe that someone has gone into my mailbox 2 houses down. Someone broke into their mailbox and has stolen checks, and they have had people writing checks to gain money from their accounts. There's an issue that we have with transients coming up and down the street, and thank goodness one transient is no longer a problem for us, but compounded with short-term rental and the influx of people who come with that, who may be fairly nefarious. There is also Section 8 housing, where people have very large, like pit bull mastiff breeds who burrow under fences to get into neighbors' yards to attack their dogs. People who park on the cemetery property and will leave cars with flat tires there for quite a while. Anyone who wants to come to visit their family members' graves will have a difficult time. And anecdotally, there are people who try to walk through that portion of the cemetery from Caldwell down to the beginning of Father Ryan, are afraid of being hurt, because there are people who have had been supposedly ejected from the housing because of drug trade, and now more recently there are concerns about child prostitution. So if there's trafficking in human persons there, I think it's a very serious issue. I hope that this would be recognized for any of the other issues with short-term rentals that are coming up. I think I may be the first person who has brought that up here, but it is a valid concern. And I also think, in light of the larger context of what is going on in our nation, with so many people who are coming in over the southern border and our proximity to that, we need to be more aware of the distribution of fentanyl and child trafficking.
Thank you.
To be able to protect our community. Thank you. Sorry I ran over time.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your service to our country. I'm going to revisit on my left, your right. Anyone else on this side of the room that I may have missed?
Good afternoon. I'm here to oppose the conditional use request for short-term rental for the property at 115 St. John. All conditional use standards must be met to approve a location for short-term rental. This property is in question is still in violation of Standard C, which states that the conditional use needs to be compatible with the character of the surrounding lands. This property does not connect to Beach Boulevard. Its entry ties directly into the surrounding neighborhood, our neighborhood, which is zoned residential all the way to Irish Hill. The ramifications of this decision are not isolated to a single property. Rather, it has a direct and long-lasting impact to the neighborhood as a whole. As a short-term rental, this house becomes a mini motel, and the city considers this commercial property without a rezoning. This is definitely infringement on the RS 7.5 residential area that sits on the north side of this house. The city has not provided proof of the receiving of any additional revenue, which is the reason for making it commercial. Questions about safety are starting to rise, which Mr. Sinks has pretty much covered already. A new issue has been introduced on the coast recently with a shortage of residential property and apartments for long-term rentings. We seem like we are reducing our supply of places for people to live. Remember, you lose approximately 2.5 citizens when you convert a house to a short-term rental. We must have a balance between residential and commercial for the city to be successful. The citizens of our neighborhood have been looking for a plan, but nothing has surfaced. Instead, we are forced to fight for the sanctity of our neighborhood, one piece of property at a time, repeatedly having to attend planning and city council meetings. You have heard from the citizens of this neighborhood voicing their concerns on many occasions on the implications of allowing short-term renting to spread throughout the neighborhood, and you have representation here today that's either here in person or have sent emails, letters, or called you personally. We need your support again. Please help us in preserving and protecting our over 100-year neighborhood marked by historic houses, homes, families, and residents who have lived here for decades by denying the conditional use request for 115 St. John. Thank you for your time, and please help save our neighborhood.
May I ask you to state your name and your address?
Oh, I'm sorry, Teresa Thompson, 1506 Avalon.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I wrote it down, didn't talk.
You're good, okay. Anyone else that I may have missed? Anyone else? And I would like to know Randall Broussard is in the house. He's in the back of the room. He's our French-Croatian resident, so. All right. There being no other comments, we'll consider public comments is now closed. I would like to take a little privilege here, get out of order briefly. Mr. Denman walked in the room late. Mr. Denman, I afford you an opportunity to give a council report if you choose.
I don't have much. Mr. Mayor, how's Mike doing?
Doing better, doing good. Hopefully, we'll see it in the office shortly. He's out and about.
Good to hear. I'll get with him. Hopefully he's back soon. We've done a lot of discussion about some projects in the ward. I saw on the agenda that there's a lot of parks that we've requested support from the county. Now, I've reached out to Ms. Rocco regarding the concrete in the bluffs. By chance, have you had any communication with supervisors
Not on that.
regarding coordination on that project?
No.
Okay. Peter, I don't know if you and I can coordinate on some way to get response from the county to get them to pledge some assistance on that, the way we've done it on every concrete road in the city of Biloxi since I've been elected.
I mean,